Childhood Sweethearts, Chapter 13. Weather to Fall. Specks of rain began to drip from the skies above, dark and angry-looking clouds hovering above head, forming a gloomy canvas that left no star in the night sky visible to the eye. Without a doubt, it was going to be a gloomy and rainy day tomorrow, possibly for even more than that, given the state of the forecast. Through the window of your dad's room, the rain could be heard getting gradually heavier in both size and speed, the tiny beads transforming into what sounded more like a perfectly accurate miming of some pony tossing stones at the window panes. From beneath the warm cocoon of bedcovers that you were laying under, the constant and amplified rapping and tapping on the window panes made you stare, your lips transforming into disturbed groans and sleepy complaints that were incomprehensible. The rain wasn't something that you were not used to, seeing as the weather in your hometown of Manhattan were mostly on the drowsy side, but it was still something that was enough to interrupt your sleeping pattern on a daily basis. You could still remember those nights of thunderous bashing of golf ball-sized pelts of raindrops coming into both the roof and window of your old house, like a buffalo stampede over the horizon. You would huddle under your bedsheets and hug yourself tight to conserve heat, trying desperately to remain warm and comfortable in the biting cold that came from with the storms, but to futile outcome. Even with the heating on, not even the slightest change of temperature took place. It was as if it was cursed. Mythical force had embedded itself into the air and rain. Muttering under your cold breath from the equally as cold bedroom, you had to forcibly pry your eyelids open with tired energy. The first thing your eyes fell upon after they were open and focused was the sleeping and peaceful form of Scootaloo beside you. She was huddled towards your body, her hooves wrapped in a firm yet loose hold around your barrel, and you hardly realised until you began to try and move, only finding that her hooves were restraining you from doing so. Although this made you smile, seeing her adorable cheek planted into the pillow next to yours, and her lips curled into a small smile, in a state of nirvana, there was no idea in your mind of how the two of you came to be in this position. Her body was warm against yours, the underside of the sheets of the cover that was draped across you both, holding the toasty heat that kept your bodies comfortable. Your eyes skipped slowly from the sleeping form of your friend over to the window, watching the rain patter down faster. In a way, it lulled you back to the state of sleep, reeling you in for a second rehearse of rest. You just lay there and watched, enjoying the combination of listening to the sound of musical taps and raps, and the embrace of the sleeping Scootaloo. Peeking down to look at your bodies, momentarily breaking contact from the window pane, you noticed that you too had your hooves encased around the body of Scootaloo. Your left hoof was wrapped around her back all the way, the touch of her wingtips being a prominent feeling above all others. Your other hoof was around half her neck, resting lightly on the back of her mane, which acted like a cushion. A mental sense of surprise triggered in your mind at how soft her mane actually was. Smooth, silky, and above all, adorable. Just for the sake of it, you gently moved your right hoof up and down in a stroking motion, prompting a sleepy mumble and slight growth of her smile.
Mummy, don't stop, Mummy. Feels so warm.
She mumbled, her voice a sleepy and dreamy whisper, as she gave a light series of shuffles and movement beneath the sheets, readjusting herself so that she was now a little closer to you, to the point that her chest was softly touching against your own. You smiled in amusement at her hardly intelligible wording, watching her closed eyelids, noticed them flicker a few times, almost as if she was waking up. Yet, she never did. Instead, her grip behind your back and around your body tightened as she pulled you even closer, your snouts now only centimetres apart from touching. You wanted to find out what the time was, but soon came to the conclusion that you simply couldn't, seeing as the clock was behind you on the nightstand, which was a movement that was restricted from the hooves of Scootaloo, bound around you like a lasso. Accepting your fate, or snuggling in the warmth of the bed, you readjusted yourself, also moving yourself with care to the point that you felt comfortable, with your nose touching against Scootaloo's, enough so that you could physically feel small and warm puffs of air exhale from your nostrils and caress the hairs on your own muzzle. It was a sensation that you had no objections in experiencing. With the majority of both your heads sticking out of the bedsheets, from mid-cheek upwards, you felt rather cold, and the warmth that was momentarily generated on your muzzle from Scootaloo's was delivered in small pulses of heat. You could also detect a hint of mint on her breath, which only added to a more pleasant reason to having no objection to the feeling. Sighing peacefully, the weight behind your eyelids caused them to close ever so slowly. A world of rest soon coming over your body as all of your senses ceased and you fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, a feeling of passive thoughts brought a warmth to your chest and mind as your eyes fluttered open after a blissful sleep. A train of emotions that was brought along by the dream that had followed your sleep. As you blinked, the spots of black that resembled ink splotches away from your vision, allowing them to refocus. The first thing that you noticed was that you appeared to be all alone. Scootaloo wasn't on the bed, where she was only hours ago. A quick glance towards the clock that was behind on the bedside table but told you that the time of day was actually 9:45. You had slept in late. Regardless, you were still too sleepy to really have any need to care about it. It wasn't like you had anything planned for the day, was it? Instead of focusing on the time, you were more focused on where Scootaloo had gotten to. You were sure that she was there when you were asleep a few hours ago, so how come she didn't wake you when she eventually stayed awake herself? Thought after thought, fears began to pluck at your synapses in your brain, something which you quickly disregarded. She was probably either downstairs or maybe in the bathroom. With the curious mindset of the whereabouts of your friend, you decided that you would go ahead and check the bathroom first. After all, it was the closest to the bedroom, literally being on the door down on the left. Next to another door that leads to your mother's bed quarters, hers being next to yours on the far right. Reaching the bathroom door, you gave a pause, stopping directly outside of it. Without pressing your ear against the wooden body of the door, you listened intently for any signs of movement on the inside. Yet, it was hard to hear anything, even in the purely dead silence that lingered in the air of the house. The only audible sound that you could hear was a combination of the outside world, an unmistakable clatter of hooves, which meant ponies were out and about, supposedly on either a general wander around the town or going to the market, and the sound of what you could only guess were pans and pots, more than likely to be your mother making something downstairs in the kitchen. Following the sound, find it best to give privacy to whoever may be in the bathroom, if any pony was there, no, all that is. You made your way down the stairs and into the kitchen, where, sure enough, your mother was working her way through making a batch of what smelled like pancakes, enhanced by the angel dust that was known as cinnamon powder. You watched the blue sapphire-coated figure of your mother for a moment, before she turned around and you saw her standing in the doorway of the kitchen. She offered you a gentle smile from a hand where the handle of a clean pan was securely placed in her jaw. "Lovely, Cerulean," she said in a chipper and crisp voice. "Fokak?" she mumbled unintelligibly. At seeing your dumbfounded expression and the confused glint in your blue eyes, she rolled her eyes, as if finally realising what she had in her own mouth, before removing it and placing it aside on the counter. "Pancake?" she repeated, motioning her hoof to the table outside. Sure enough, there was a promising stack of pancakes at the ready on a plate, with a trio of juice-looking blueberries on the top. Their juices partially running down the sides of the entire stack in a dark red-brown sugary blood trail, a small moat of the juices pooling on the bottom of the plate, resembling a bloody river around a delectable tower resembling a castle. All tiredness forgotten, a new spark of life perked up in your eyes, and you thanked your mother before taking a seat at the table. She handed you a fork, and you took it from her with thanks, but as soon as you were about to extend it over the pancake stack to take a bite from it, you stopped your hoof that held the fork in mid-air, a thought resurfacing in your mind. "Ma'am?" you asked softly, lowering the fork again as you turned to face her. "Has Scoots come down yet?" Your mother only gave a somewhat sunny but knowing smirk as she dumped the pan she was holding previously into the sink. "Of course, dear. She came down not too long ago, but went back upstairs to use the bathroom, I think," she said, and you gave a small half shrug with your shoulder, tending back to your pancakes. It was a big stack, so with that in mind, you decided to leave about half of the stack in case Scootaloo wanted to try some. As you were nibbling at the discs of buttery and delectable pancakes that held as much delight as a pool on a hot summer's day, you could have sworn you heard your mother's voice mumble something to herself about the way you used the nickname of Scoots earlier, right before she began humming an unrecognisable tune as she cleaned up the countertops of the kitchen. Eventually finishing the pancakes, and alone with your thoughts, You took your leave from the table and made your way back towards the stairs, leaving the plate of the remaining pancakes to Scootaloo, should she want anything if she hasn't eaten anything already. En route back to your dad's room, you noticed that the bathroom door was open a crack, indicating that the filly in your mind was out. As you thought, she was in the bedroom, hair back, lightly facing the bedsheets, and her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. She looked as if she was deep in thought. You entered quietly, stopping only a few feet away from the door. "Scoots?" You stared. You started, but your voice toned down a notch, as to not startle her. Her ear gave a sharp twitch, and she half rolled herself around so that her neck could crane around to meet you. However, unlike the warmth that radiated from her eyes as usual, they were not as inviting. As a matter of fact, she looked troubled. More than troubled. It was an expression that you couldn't quite place, yet it gave you the right to feel concerned and even a little worried, and you knew that she could sense it. You could feel it. Morning? You began tentatively. "Is something wrong?" you asked her, and she only huffed and stuck her tongue out at you in a spiteful manner. Your heart gave a twang of surprise and hurt at this, and you took an instinctive step back, clearly unprepared for this. Whatever was going on, this wasn't the Scootaloo you knew and loved. This was something twisted. Not right, nor natural. You had absolutely no idea on this earth why she was acting this way, or whether this was some kind of cruel prank of hers. Either way, you didn't like it. What happened next was surreal. The door behind you slammed itself shut, and you winced and snapped on the spot, your coat standing on end at what had just happened. There was no reason for that door to close. There was no force or gust that could have done that on its own. It was impossible. "Scoots, what's happening? What's going on?" you asked, taking fast-paced steps forward and stopped in front of her as she sat upright on the bed, glaring down at you. Her eyes were like knives to your soul. What was a bright, optimistic purple was now a cold and stony, pebble-like marble of empty colour. Those were not the eyes of Scootaloo. They were something otherworldly. In an instant, the form of the filly in front of you snapped at the speed of lightning, zipping to your side, and for some reason, you got the sensation of being on a boat at sea as the floor, an entire room, began to take on small vibration, then increased dramatically into a full-fledged shake. Scootaloo stood beside you, her teeth bared with an unholy amount of disgust and spite. "I hate you, Cerulean. This was a mistake from the start. How could I fall in love with a pony like you?" Her voice transformed from a scruffy, tomboyish and trademark tone into a distorted, almost demonic version of her original. An odd spur of the moment brought your eyes being fixed directly to the iris in an unbreakable barrier of both fright and shock, and as hard as you might try, nothing you did could break the wall. All that you could see was the cold dead eyes of the filly in front of you. From your tear ducts, a stinging sensation could be felt, and an unmistakable wetness was tickling and tingling at the corner of your eyes, moments before you could feel the coldness of it slide down your cheek and hang off the edge before hitting the floor. You could hear a growl arise from the back of her throat, like a mix between a dog and an enraged ram, getting louder and louder before it began to demolish your eardrums. Her orange hooves gripped your shoulders and began to give them a hard shove and then a shake, causing a spike in your fear factor. Not a moment too soon did you feel your heart begin to tear, a trail of hot tears now burning your cheeks as they rolled down. "Cerulean! Cerulean! Cerulean! Blaze! Cerulean! Cerulean, wake up! Wake up!" A muffled out voice called your name multiple times, a voice that you knew and recognised. It was faint, but there. To mix in with the voice, you could feel a tight grip on both your sides, a firm sense at your shoulders. Your mouth opened and closed uncontrollably, but no words ever came out, only incoherent squeaks and mumbles. A strong thump gave a constant, relentless thwacking at your chest, at a high enough force to make it actually physically burn, and the equivalent heat was evident on your cheeks. No. You muttered, a choked gasp in the back of your throat, almost like a cry trying to break free. After you stopped, between your muttering, a female voice, the same that belonged to Scootaloo, hit your ears, her tones in a tizzy. She sounded like she had been crying. Cerulean, come on! Wake up! You could hear her say, her tone in desperate hush. Come on! She shook harder with all of her might, and all of a sudden, you snapped your eyes open in a flash, a sense of relief washing over your body as a grasp of a trance that was just broken left your body. All that filled your vision was a lock of purple and orange, a pair of glistening purple eyes in the middle of the orange section that you soon found out were that indeed the eyes of Scootaloo. She has clearly been crying, and held signs of her own features of panicked and heavy breathing, almost as if she had been on the brink of being scared to death, and you knew all too well why that was. She gave a wet sniffle and threw her hooves around you, but you couldn't move for the shock of the moment. You felt her tense as her hooves locked around your barrel, and whether that was because of how freezing your skin had become with fear and cold sweat, or if she was simply relieved, you couldn't pinpoint. Unlike in the past, when she returned one of your hugs to her in a display of friendly affection, there was something quite different about this one. It was as if she had been trying to pull you hard enough so that you could somehow fuse with her, like she never wanted to let you go. You found comfort for your rampaging and racing nerves in her hold, but your heart was still beating a trillion times a second from the paralysing shock of what you had just witnessed moments ago. Scoots. You trembled in a cold shout of anxiety and fright. It took all of your willpower to pronounce her name. With tiny, tiny eyes, you could only watch her as the still vigorously vibrating nerves beneath your skin refused to calm down. There was something off about Scootaloo, and the idea behind it was the vibrations and fear in her own body it seemed to radiate, like a communicable disease or illness. A quick and calculated guess would suggest that she had probably experienced an equally tension-riddled, soul-devouring night terror. Was it possible that both of you had experienced the same dream? Sucking in a shaky breath, your left hoof managed to free itself from the pits of anxiety and lightly bring itself up to contact with Scootaloo's back, just to let her know that you were okay and to reassure her that all was fine. As much of a lie that might have been. Upon contact with her back, she gave a violent, startled judder, an easily identifiable shiver coursing down her entire spinal column, freezing to the touch. Scoots, I'm sorry, you whispered to her in a shaky breath, unable to keep yourself steady and centred. Not a single word was uttered throughout this time, and you were only able to hold onto her for comfort as a small series of flashes of what happened earlier pulsed within your brain. It was almost similar to something from a horror film. Violently shaking the room, a possessed version of Scootaloo, a dark and gloomy atmosphere. It was all just so surreal and out of the blue. There was nothing to indicate why your brain thought of such darkness in the first place. You had nothing against her, and you had a crush on her. She was your filly friend, some pony that you loved and cared for. It was so intangible. Dreams are not meant to be scary, nor something to fear, and even if one were to find themselves in a position such as the one you were experiencing, including Scootaloo, they shouldn't be able to get hurt. It all made little to no sense. Dreamed up beings have no physicality, no actual means or force beyond imagination, so the actual reason that the forces you encountered in your dream gave way to a new and disturbing train of thought, one that you knew was fruitless in trying to find a logical response. It was all a trick of the mind that mirrored what was happening in real life, and then projecting it into your dream to make the mind believe that it was happening in real life. To know that you were back in the land of the living and reality was a huge relief of anxiety to your body. You only wished that the same could go for your filly friend, and still, she was crying on your shoulder. It's one thing to see a colt cry, but a filly that you're close to is like a shot in the heart, especially Scootaloo. Her entire body shuddered, and she gave a whimper, holding onto your shoulder and body with her firm hooves. In an attempt to comfort her, you raised your other hoof to create a full hug, hoping that the knowledge of a friendly face and set of ears would help ease her. It's okay, you said reassuringly into her ear. I've got you. Relax, Scoots. Eventually, she did calm down, her shaky breaths returning to their normal pacing. The two of you sat there in a silent embrace before she eventually broke and pulled away, her eyes broken and meeting yours. Her cheeks were matted down, and her eyes were glassy, like an iced-over lake. Her lips didn't move as she scanned over your face, and she eventually spoke up. Am I ugly? She asked bitterly, her breath cold. The question alone made your mind gag in bewilderment. That was not at all what you expected her to say. Scootaloo? Ugly? What was she getting at? Had we both actually been in the same tormenting and unforgiving dream by some odd mysterious coincidence? Thinking fast, feeling awkward and fearing that she may take your stance as a yes, you came out with the first thing that came into your mind. No, you're not, you stated. Her mouth opened, and her eyes began to shimmer. Do you really mean that? Yes, of course I do, you confirmed, nuzzling her cheek. Why would you even think such a stupid thing? She looked at you, and wiped her hoof across her nose. Because you called me it, she said in a hurt, miserable pout. I thought we were friends, she said quietly, as if you just thrust a knife into her chest and impaled her heart. Your insides churned and cringed at her words. Nothing could have prepared you for what had left her mouth when you asked her about why she was saying such horrific things. She took a while to force herself to explain the details of her story, and it was something that caused a fear to fire up deep within your heart. In every single and identical detail, the night terror that she had witnessed shared a very similar timeline and setting to your own. Same room, same positions, same everything. Only that it was you in Scootaloo's place, and you being the one yelling abuse at her. The things she said spiked at your skin, giving you chills. There was no way on this planet that you'd ever say anything of that kind to some pony as meaningful to you as her. Ever. There was only one thing for it. There was nothing more to do nor say. Heck, you couldn't even think of anything. Your brain had transformed into ice, and it hurt. It hurt something fierce, something nasty. I'm sorry, you said. Ears plopped back and flat. I'm sorry, you said sincerely, a hoof resting on her shoulder. She had stopped crying and was now fully focused on you. I wish I knew why. I honestly do, you said, staring into her eyes in a fixed view of her irises, ringed by that glorious little light and gorgeous hue of purple. Can you ever forgive me? I already have, she said, the fair signs of a smile working its way on her lips, the sides of her mouth curling slightly. No matter what, you'll always be my friend. Besides, a Cutie Mark Crusader never leaves another fellow Crusader hanging, she said in a high spirit. Sharing her optimism, you raised your hoof to the air, Hairston falling after it, and then you both clunked hoofs together, the sound echoing in the dead silence of the room. Following up with a shared hoof bump and optimistic attitude, the two of you hugged and forgot about your troubles. If there is one thing that came in short supply these days, it was ponies that you could call your best friend. And knowing that one of the best of said friends was beside you, a whole new section of your heart was opened up. The following afternoon. Hey Cerulean! There you are! We've been looking all over for you! The voice of Apple Bloom hauled up at you from amongst a sea of ponies crowded around in the street of Ponyville that was currently split off in sections and bordered off with metal barriers. From your own position, you struggled to move, but managed to push yourself through the smothering crowd of crammed ponies that were all leaning and crowing their bodies upwards and every which way to get clear view of what was happening in front of them. Eventually coming up in front of the Southern filly, you noticed that she was with Sweetie Belle, mirroring her friendly smile. What took you so long? She asked, as she glanced to your side, as if expecting to see some pony else. Where's Scoots? Getting ready, you replied simply. She's decided to go race without me, you said, much to the white unicorn's surprise. What? Oh, it's just that we both thought that you'd be joining in too, seeing as you also have a scooter, don't you? She said with a quizzical raise of her brow, eyeing you closely, as was Apple Bloom. All you gave as a response was a simple shrug and frown. I do, but racing is something I don't really think I'm quite ready for. Besides, I've seen what happens in some races, and it isn't pretty, you said matter-of-factly. Oh, okay. Sweetie said. If you really feel that way. Just as Sweetie finished her sentence, the voice of a stallion echoed out from a megaphone from somewhere on the track, presumably the starting line. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Pony Hill Scooter Rally. We're only 10 minutes to the start of the race, so when all of the participating bottom fillies please enter the track and set up at the starting line. Oh, we should probably get over there too, Apple Bloom said with bright eyes and a smile. We've got to offer our support to Scootaloo before the race starts, she said, and the three of you headed over through the crowd of ponies, with some difficulty, to the starting line of the track. It took you maybe about 2 of the 10 minutes you had, but you eventually found your way. There was a gap between the barriers that allowed all of you to squeeze through and enter the main track set for the scooter rally participants to ride on, and when you were on it, you instantly noticed a clearing in the area, every obstacle extracted to make it safe for a ride. The only obstacles set were orange rubber cones with white bands positioned in specific areas of the track, such as corners, where they were arranged so that fillies and colts have to bear themselves around them in a slalom-style manoeuvre. The track was boarded off, so that it steers in a full loop around the town of Ponyville, running from the start line in the marketplace through the town centre and around the right borderline of the town and back to the starting line where it will finish after a single lap. From the looks of it, the race will only last roughly 20 minutes, maybe not even that. You also noted, with thankful stars, that the roads used as tracks were safely barricaded with bales of hay all around to prevent injury. Even with racing helmets and elbow guards on, they could easily be more than a simple accident on a negative wish list. The starting line's over there, Sweetie said with a point of her hoof to the left, towards where a dark brown-coated stallion wearing a black and white striped shirt was standing with a megaphone strapped around his neck with a lanyard. Come on. Over at the starting line, there was already a small group of foals setting up their scooters and checking them over. A total of 5 children, with a ratio of 3 fillies to 2 colts. A few of the foals were someone that you recognise from the school playground, but you've never actually made any real conversation with. The remaining ones in the group were some you haven't quite seen before, leading you to believe that they might have travelled around here from out of town just for this event. But where's Scootaloo? Shouldn't she be here and readying herself for a race like she planned? She's not here, girls, you said, frowning. Where do you think she is? Beats me, Apple Bloom said with a shrug. You think she chickened out at the last minute? No, that's not like her. She wouldn't back down from a race, Sweetie said, albeit with a laugh from the small joke. Wait, is that her? You said, squinting your eyes to focus your eyes behind Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle, where a small orange spectre was coming into view from the distance, riding what looked to be like a scooter. When the girls turned to face where you were looking towards, their lips transformed into small smiles, happy to see that their Pegasus friend had managed to make it in time. It took a solid 30 seconds for her to screech to a stop with a short-lived skid in front of the 3 of you, and you noted her smirk along with those competitive eyes of hers. They blazed like a purple wildfire with a head for a fiery competition. That's not all you've noticed, and you could tell the girls picked it out too, from their expressions of pure amazement as they admired what she was riding. Her old scooter was different. Upgraded and freshly repainted, with a soft lick of atomic blue paint, and black ribbed handlebars for extra grip on those tightly calculated twists and turns. Even the wheels were brand new, and the old and dulled red plastic cylinders replaced with a rather eye-catching white rubber tread that was built for off-roading and stunting. It appeared that the only thing that was the same was her purple helmet with double white racing stripes, a tuft of her hair curling out from its confines and tickling her soft orange cheek in the wind. It was more than obvious she has been wisely occupying herself on the time she has had in the days leading to the racing event. Whoa! Where do you find time for this, Scoot? Apple Bloom piped up, closely admiring the bodywork of the scooter. Scootaloo only gave a confident chuckle. I had all day to do this, she said proudly. Didn't take too long to get this baby ready for the race. Looks amazing, Sweetie Belle agreed, a tiny surge of green-coloured magic sparkling at the tip of her horn. She paused for a moment, as if waiting for your own opinion, and when she found you blankly staring, she gave you a nudge in the shoulder. Yeah, you stuttered embarrassingly. It looks fantastic, Scoot. To be sure to win with all that suited up and ready to go. you said, hoping that the worrying concern in your voice didn't betray you in your wording, even if you knew that you sounded sarcastic. Apple Bloom's sharp and perceptive ears seemed to be the only pair of ears that caught onto it, as evidenced by her twitching and her small momentary glance towards you, as if she was going to say something, but wisely decided against it. "Hey, Scootaloo! Over here!" A voice called out, one of very familiar tone. It sounded as if it had come from where the participating colts and fillies were readying themselves for the start of the race, and sure enough, when all your friends and your own heads turned towards the source of the voice, a bolt of cold, bitter energy zipped down your spinal column. Diamond Tiara, the pink devil of Ponyville School, the tormentor of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, your nemesis. She was stood beside a colt on a scooter, painted in a matching grey to his coat, one that resembled Char. His white mane was concealed and pinned underneath a rather expensive-looking black helmet with white stripes running down the sides. His eyes were a royal blue that were cloned to Diamond Tiara's own, and his Cutie Mark was of a trophy sporting a large silver-plated racing wheel atop a small stand of the same material. He glared daggers at the four of you, but mostly Scootaloo. You got the immediate vibe that this colt was the competitive kind, but not the nice sort. He had a bad energy about him that you could feel even from your distance. You glared back. "Nice scooter, Chicken Lou. I hope you brought something more dazzling if you want to beat my cousin here," she snickered like a devil himself. "Cousin?" Apple Bloom whispered to you and Sweetie Belle, but you both gave a shrug to emphasise your absence of knowledge for any relatives of hers. "Yes, cousin," Diamond said, her breath hot on your ears as she took you by surprise during your murmuring with your friends. She was so sneaky that it was surreal. She could possibly sneak into some pony's nightmares of silent hooves, like the ones attached to her own barrel. The Grim Reaper himself would have to find a second line of employment with her on the move in the dark cloud known as Night Terrors. "This is my cousin Silverline," she said, motioning towards the young colt. Come to think of it, Silverline looks no younger than yourself. He could very well be in the same age group as you and your friends. "I'm going to get back at you for what you did to me, Blaze," she said, pointing to her nose. You noticed a slight imbalance of symmetry in her snout. "If anything, I did her a favour and made her look prettier to look at. If only I weren't being sarcastic." No pony dared make a sound or retort to her royal snootiness, but that dare was broken when a growl built up in the back of Scootaloo's throat, gradually becoming louder. "Leave him alone, Tiara Twit," Scootaloo hollered, advancing from her scooter and taking a mighty step towards the little tyrant, only to be held back by Sweetie's hooves, lest there risk be the breakout of a brawl between the two. "Oh, that's right. Hold your flightless friend back. I'm going to get you both in the future, I swear it," she said slowly and coldly, glancing daggers between the both of you and Scoots. "Oh, why that little... Oh, I ought to give her a fresh one where she stands talking out like that." You thought to yourself as a bubble of hot anger brewed within you. "No, Cerulean," Apple Bloom said softly with a touch of her hoof to your shoulder. "Don't."
"All right, everybody. There's only 3 minutes left until the rally starts. All participants, please ensure that you're all ready for the waving of the starting flag."
The announcer's voice boomed out, signalling a small round of cheers from the spectating crowd. You even spotted your mother in the crowd, standing with Scootaloo's mum in the front of the barrier, a clear field of view in front of them. Diamond Tiara snickered to herself. "Well, I best be off. When my cousin finishes first, you can enjoy your failure," she said, right before she trotted off to rejoin her cousin, Silverline. "Scoots, you ready?" you asked her, turning to face her angered facial features that were still scrunching a nasty, disapproving scowl. "Oh, I'm going to beat her, that's for sure. So yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this," she said in a war cry-like manner, stepping back onto her scooter and buzzing off with a zooming start. She stopped between 2 of other participants, a colt with a blue mane and orange coat, and a filly with a rosy tinted coat and a strawberry blonde mane. At the start line, Scootaloo took in a sharp inhale of the crisp and cold air, allowing her nerves to simmer as she built up her posture in a race-ready setting. Standing beside Sweetie and Apple Bloom, you could only stare at the back of the orange Pegasus, a well of worry filling with concern for her. Something about this race, it seemed as if it was going to happen, but that something was that caused you to worry. You don't know when or how it might happen or transpire, but you could feel the bad energy emanating from the thought. This was not going to end well, and you knew it. Oh, Cerulean, come on. We need to get off the track. They're about to start, Sweetie said, tapping your shoulder and snapping your fort train. Right, you said quietly, following her and Applebloom off the track and behind the barrier. Thankfully, you found yourselves a safe place where the other school children were watching the event, supervised by none other than Shirley, who sat beside the group. Every other foal that was racing was sat with her, and that included Archer, Rumble and Halo. They were sat at the front in that exact order, Shirley being directly beside Archer. As they saw you and the other two Crusaders approach, Archer was the first to wave, and the other two, quickly gaining notice of your appearance, joined in, motioning beside them with a hoof. Halo's hoof patted down on an empty spot beside you, and you offered her a smile as you sat beside her. Applebloom seating herself next to you, and Sweetie sitting on the end. She was sat in front of a cult you recognise as Button Mash, the only cult you've met that is plainly addicted to nothing but gaming. He was easily identifiable by his green and red beanie, with the purple propeller. "Hey, you three," you said as you sat down with them. "Oh, hey, Cerulean. We were wondering when you're going to show up. We've been waiting for you," Rumble said. "Hey, cutie," Halo said, somewhat teasingly and catching you off guard. Her voice was low and smooth as butterscotch candies, but despite it being used for her bluntly random personality and hijinks, you took no notice of it and attempted to follow up her words and stuff them inside your mental trapdoor, where it shall be forgotten about for hopefully forever. What did she just say?" Sweetie asked, puzzled. "Nothing," Halo blurted, out on a snap, blushing furiously, although no one really noticed it upon that rosy coat of hers. "Halo!" Archer scowled. From beside her, Rumble tutted. "Ignore her, Cerulean," he said, Halo shooting him a betrayed glare. "That's already my plan," you said with a shrug and a roll of your eyes, and Halo gave you a nudge in the arm. "Pfft, rude," she pouted.
All right, everybody. May I have your attention, please?
The announcer hollered through his megaphone as his green eyes scanned the crowd.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with my great pleasure to welcome you all to Ponyville Scooter Rally.
He shouted warmly, a smile barred behind his lips as he spoke, the crowd roaring wildly with cheers.
I would please like to request that all spectators stay behind the barriers at all times for your own safety, and that nobody enters the area for risk of health hazards. Thank you.
Alright then, I suppose it's happening, you mumbled beneath your breath. What do you mean? Ain't you excited for this, Blaze? Applebloom asked from beside you, clearly able to hear even your smallest of breaths. She was facing you with a tiny frown, and you returned it. "No," you replied with a sigh. "Not really. I just have a bad feeling. You know, with Tiara Twit and her cousin out there," you said, glancing over to where Scootaloo and Silverline were positioned, bodies at the ready for a launch-off start. You saw him glare at her from his place on the right from her. You inwardly groaned at him. "Wait, so what's up? Something is clearly bothering you," she asked, nudging herself ever so slightly closer to you on the floor by shifting her hindquarters on the ground, her tail wrapping around her flanks. "I'll explain later, Bloom, I promise," you said, and she simply nodded, showing she understood.
On your marks.
The announcer's voice blared out once more. The racers tensed their bodies, ready to rumble.
Get set.
They tested their grips on the handlebars, releasing and re-gripping in a mantra. Some licked their lips, and narrowed their eyes in concentration and anticipation for the drop of the flag.
Go!
Midway in the race. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on! Scootaloo panted as she furiously pumped her wings to propel herself forward with extra thrusting power. She has been riding nearly all of her life, and the perks on her side was a tolerable resistance to being balanced with a steady pair of wings. She may not be able to fly and get off the ground like the rest of her species, but what she can't make up for in flying, she makes up for in scooting with speed, and her goals of winning were pushing her limits through the roof. That cousin of Diamond Tiara's, Silverline, was in front, and he was certainly faster than her. Annoying? Yes. A challenge for her? Yes. She would never go up to him, lest she be branded the loser chicken that she ever so hated being referred to as by that pink-coated brute of a rich filly. They were currently halfway through the town square, passing by the marketplace, and Scootaloo was already in second place. The other racers, specifically the only other colt on the track and the two other fillies, were behind her, although it was clear that they were quite inexperienced to handle the kind of speeds that Silverline and Scootaloo were travelling at. They were without a doubt out of their leagues, with hopes of winning at the rate they were going at. Bad for them, but perfect for Scootaloo. This gave her just the edge and advantage she needed to keep her head in that game. Silverline was directly in front of her, and she mustered all their strength in her wings to force herself forward. An aching burn began to make its presence known in her back from that friction caused by her wings. Beads of sweat from her energy drainage were being blown off her forehead and into the air just as soon as they had formed. But even with the conditioning from the wind, her body still felt heated and tired. However, she wasn't the sort for giving up without a second heartbeat. She pressed herself harder and harder, that adrenaline coursing through her, causing her mouth to become partially dry as her speed built. Eventually, she came neck to neck with Silverline, who shot her a surprised glare, almost as if he thought he was hallucinating when he saw her come up. The wind swept into her body, pushing her back with resistance. The blue-eyed colt gave her a rather impressed yet cocky smirk. "Pfft, not bad for a filly," he said, his voice lost partially in the rush of wind, prompting him to amplify his vocals up to above shouting level. "Let's see you top this." Without warning, he gave himself an extra push. With him not being a Pegasus, but instead an air pony, he gripped tightly around his handlebars and pushed out a leg to touch the floor, bending his knee in a pumping action to give himself a thrust in momentum, allowing him to overtake Scootaloo. With a challenging grin, the orange Pegasus concentrated her energy into her wings, sending her main focus to powering her wings to pump. It was a quick way to exhaust oneself out, but it meant she didn't have to lose. She would be all for it. No pony stands her up, and especially not when they have a reputation to uphold. Not only for herself, but for her sister, Rainbow Dash. Mustering her body's momentum forward, she again came neck to neck with Silverline. Eventually, she pushed past him, taking him by surprise. But that surprise was short-lived when her wings gained an intense aching sensation that soon transformed into a burn from the speed at which she was flapping them. Friction and tension in her muscles in her back began to pulse with a burning pain. It wasn't intolerable, but it still hurt the young filly. Regardless, she pressed on. It isn't a sensation she hasn't felt before, but only when she was going for a new speed record, this kind of pain arose. It wasn't dangerous, but it might lead to some health-related problems in the future if the Pegasus would go past her limits, even when they know what risks they are taking. Unfortunately, as soon as their tired body managed to push by the competitive cousin of Dame Tiara, they were already coming up towards the borderline of the right side of Ponyville, prior to bolting through the town centre. She could hear Silverline hot on her trail, shifting straight up behind her and forcing himself to keep up with her. Little to the Pegasus girl's knowledge, she was coming up to perhaps the hardest part of the track, one that would prove a challenge. A sharp corner bracketed by a single row of white picket fences and a hill. A scattered arrangement of cones littering the entire middle, requiring precise and agile calculation for moving around. This was going to be a difficult task, for sure. With a check behind her shoulder for sight of her competitor, Scootaloo spotted him hot on her tail, enough so that she could practically feel him occasionally give her tangible bumps with the bumper of his own scooter. She prepared herself for manoeuvring around the cones, balancing herself as steadily as she could on the board of their scooter. Thankfully for the extra grip of her wheels provided on the crumbly, dirty terrain of dry mud and soil, a cone to her right was swiftly avoided with the aid of a single open wing, allowing the air to brush across it and giving her the advantage of being alone. A cone to her right was swiftly avoided with the aid of a single open wing, allowing the air to brush across it and giving her the advantage of being able to swiftly brush across around it with the assistance of the wind. Silverline, unfortunately for him, did not have the pair of wings for guidance on such obstacles, seeing as he was an air pony, and this was a large disadvantage that shined many red lights in his brain, causing him to inaccurately calculate any precise manoeuvres and instead collide with one of that Scootaloo had just dodged. It threw him off balance, but even as he struggled to correct himself and his balance on his scooter as they both tipped to the side, he eventually righted himself and managed to secure all four of his wheels back onto the floor. With the thankfully fortunate advantage of being able to cut further ahead in terms of seconds between the two due to his endeavour, Scootaloo was granted the opportunity to skip ahead of him in his time of slowing down. She smirked to herself and steeled her eyes forward in concentration, passing each and every cone as precisely as she could with the aid of her wings for directing her path, skimming with one wing open and flattened with the other closed for aerodynamics. "Almost there," Scootaloo said with a short pant, her wings buzzing loudly, as she finished turning the sharp, dirt path and headed back towards the marketplace to the starting line. Over the raging wind that blew and brushed against her helmet and pressurised it down onto her head, Scootaloo could hear the cheering and the many hooves of spectators thundering against the floor in applause of the Pegasus' upcoming victory of first place. She couldn't help but crack a grin of triumph as she grew closer and closer to becoming the winner. It brought an accomplishment-triggered warmth to her chest, and it was a sensation she would never grow tired of experiencing. Your face met Scootaloo's, mirroring her smile. It was a smile of proud origin that you sincerely delivered to her. The Crusaders beside you cheered alongside you, joining in unison with the entire class, including Miss Cherry. "Go, Scootaloo!" Halo cheered as she threw her hooves up into the air, practically screaming her words right before she began to chant her name, eventually reeling in the rest of the class to join in with her. "Scootaloo! Scootaloo! Scootaloo!" They all chanted together in a chorus as Scootaloo crossed the finish line, herself cheering as she pumped her hoof victoriously. "I swear, that girl has a seriously infectious habit of manipulation," you mentally said to yourself, a choke escaping your lips. You were taken by surprise when the overactive and energetic filly grabbed you and locked you within her firm hold, her bone-crushing strength grip of a hug squeezing the life out of you. "She won! She won!" she said happily, pressing her cheek into yours as she pulled you closer to the point where you were both touching barrels. Okay. Halo, let go. Can't breathe," you pleaded, pushing her hooves in hopes she would let go. You were thankful for when Rumble decided to help out in the time of need, gripping firmly yet gently on her shoulders and prying her away from you until she finally let go. You sharply inhaled fresh oxygen as your personal space was granted back to you. Despite the death hug, Rumble couldn't hold his laughter back at the moment he witnessed. "Shut up! I have witnesses! That was attempted murder!" you accused defensively, still recovering. It only prompted him to laugh harder. Archer even joined in for an added torment. "Archer, next time, keep it on a ball and chain, will you please?" "Sorry, Blaze," he says, he rubbed a tear out of his eye. "There's no keeping Halo behaved, and I learned that the hard way," he said, his laughter dying down. Halo only gave him a raspberry with her tongue, sticking it all the way out at him.
Mares and gentlecoats, the winner of this year's annual Ponyville Scooter Rally is Scootaloo.
The race announcer said, through his megaphone, followed up with an uproar of cheers and congratulations as the fury of the moment stepped off their scooter and released a strap from beneath her chin, removing her helmet and allowing her hair to puff out to its trademark glory. As Scootaloo gazed over the crowd as they cheered, she soon found herself being swept from her hooves by a blue blare, otherwise known as Rainbow Dash. She held her in mid-air, hooves interlocked in a proud, affectionate hug that took the little filly by great surprise until she returned the hug. "Oh, Scoots, that was so awesome! I was watching from the skies and you nailed it! I'm proud of you, sister," she said, setting her back down and awarding her a playful nuggie. "Thanks, Rainbow," she said gratefully with a smile. Soon after the two sisters shared their moment, Fireheart joined up to congratulate her daughter, and you soon followed suit the Crusaders and the rest of the class, including Cherry. You wasted no time in giving her an affectionate nuzzle to the cheek before encasing her in a congratulatory hug with Sweet Spell and Apple Bloom. As best as she could, Scootaloo made an attempt to enveloping all three of you at once with her tiny hooves, only managing to stretch around half of your back and Sweetie's. "Glad to see you finally made it out safely, Scootaloo," Sweetie said. "Yeah, that was amazing," agreed Apple Bloom. You simply said nothing, as you felt the hug was enough to prove your proudness of her. Sadly, the group hug was shortened with an annoyingly abrupt interruption caused by, of course, a certain pink brute. No! There's no way you could have beat Silverline," Diamond Tiara said, with great protest in her voice as she joined in uninvitedly with congratulations. The whole town dropping silent in an instant, with her voice being raised. "You cheated," she accused, and a series of murmuring amongst the crowd began, a sequence of hushed whispering. "I cheated? Are you kidding me?" Scootaloo said with pure annoyance in her voice, as her eyes narrowed upon seeing the brute approach. She glared daggers at her, as if they were wrestling in a ring, ready to hop straight into an all-out brawl. As they stared at each other down, it was almost as if they were waiting for the starting bell to ring. "Yes, you cheated. There's no other explanation. You came first," Diamond protested, and Scootaloo scoffed. "Well, maybe if you put some effort in who you picked to best me, you might have gotten a better result," she said angrily, pressing her snout against Diamond Tiara's with a snarl. Her comeback earned a choir of "Oohs" from the crowd. "She's got you there, Tiara," the voice of Archer said smugly, with a confident smirk, as the other school children began giggling. "You shut up. This has nothing to do with you," she argued, stabbing her hoof towards the blue-coated colt, who was unfazed by the gesture. "Diamond Tiara!" Shirley snapped at her, immediately catching her off guard at her input of authority. "One more word out of you, and there shall be a week's worth of detention waiting for you every day after school. Understand?" she finished with a raised brow. Diamond Tiara grudgingly held back a retort before it escaped. "Yes, Miss Shirley," she grumbled. "Good. Now, I don't want to hear any more remarks from any pony. Otherwise, the detention warning still stands," she said, individually glancing over her students. "Yes, Miss Shirley," they all replied in unison for their teacher, and she smiled warmly as if nothing ever happened. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," Fireheart told her daughter as she hugged her warmly. "I'll tell you what. How about we have a proper celebration? We could invite every pony in town over too, if you'd like," she said, her eyes bright with the idea. "That sounds awesome," Scootaloo agreed ecstatically, accompanied with nods from the other friends and yourself. "Well, great. Every pony can head back to our place if they want to join in with the fun," Fireheart announced, before any pony could respond. A pink blare whipped in front of her. Pinkie Pie. Of course. Not a single soul in Equestria can mention the word party without her appearing out of absolutely nowhere. Kind of interesting, really, albeit mysterious. "Sounds to me like you need a party planner," she said in that hyper voice of hers, filled with nothing but the purest brand of optimism. Seemingly out of thin air, she wheeled out a miniature cannon called Sonic Blue with pink wheels that had yellow flower designs on them. "You won't be disappointed. Besides, I'm compensating for your welcome party that I totally forgot about because I didn't know you had moved to town, and how crazy is that? I mean, I know everybody's in town. I didn't know you were coming to town, so it's so crazy that I didn't see you were coming to town and moving in. I mean, it's crazier than..." A hoof plugged over her mouth. Specifically, Raymond Ash's hoof. "Sorry about Pinkie Pie. She can't go for a second without whipping out her cannon like or talking someone's ears off. Right, Pinks?" she said apologetically, eyeing Pinkie closely with a warning stare as she said that last part. You couldn't help but giggle at her nature. She was almost like an older twin of Halo. Come to think of it, that would be scary if the two were related. I mean... Ugh. "Well, what's every pony waiting for? Let's go," Hello said, backed up by every pony's cheering moments before they, and yourself, made for the residence of Fireheart. Oh, God. Alright then. That's kind of gone on for a bit longer than I thought it would. But I'm afraid that concludes the entire story. Oh, let me just say, I had quite a lot of fun reading this again. It's been so long since I've gone back to look over this story, and just to look at it again, it's... Oh, I can't even describe it. Oh, man. Anywho, I suppose this is the part where it's an awkward goodbye, so here's what I do it as. Right then. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this series. And as usual, I shall see you in the next video, and that's enough from me, I think. So yeah, without further ado, with love, from England, FireRain.